James Carter had always believed that respect was something he had to command. As the regional manager of a prestigious corporate firm in New York, he carried an air of authority wherever he went. His employees followed his orders, but not out of admiration, out of fear. His words were sharp, his demeanor cold, and his expectations rigid. To James, leadership meant control. If people didn't listen, he made sure they felt the consequences. The office was a place of perfection, and he tolerated no mistakes. His employees spoke in hushed whispers whenever he passed by, avoiding eye contact, afraid of his wrath. Under his leadership, the company had seen results. Deadlines were met, projects were completed efficiently, and profits soared. On paper, James was an excellent manager. But what he failed to notice was the suffocating environment he had created. There was no warmth, no loyalty, just fear. One day, a new janitor, Mr. Raymond Thompson, joined the office. He was an elderly man with silver hair, a slow but steady gait, and a warm smile that never faded. Unlike the others, Raymond wasn't intimidated by James. He greeted him with kindness, held the door open for others, and treated every person, whether an executive or an intern, with the same level of respect. James barely acknowledged Raymond. To him, the janitor was insignificant, just another worker in the background. But Raymond's actions spoke louder than any words. He was never late, never complained, and always worked with a quiet dignity that people admired. One evening, as James was leaving the office, he saw Raymond helping a young intern pick up papers that had scattered all over the floor. The intern looked embarrassed, but Raymond's words were gentle. "No need to be ashamed, son. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we correct them." James scoffed silently and walked past them. "Wasting time with kindness," he muttered under his breath. But something about Raymond's words lingered in his mind. A few weeks later, James held an important meeting with his top executives. As usual, he spoke with authority, outlining expectations, issuing orders. But something felt off. The team was silent, their expressions weary. He noticed how stiff they were, how they avoided speaking up. Frustrated, he slammed his hand on the table. "Why is no one contributing ideas? Do I have to do everything myself?" One executive, Michael, hesitated before answering. "Sir, we follow your instructions. You always have the final say." James frowned. "That doesn't mean you can't think for yourselves." No one responded. The air was thick with tension. That night, as James worked late, he heard a quiet conversation from the break room. He recognized Raymond's voice. "You can't force respect," Raymond was saying. "People might obey out of fear, but real respect? That's something you earn by the way you treat others." James felt something stir inside him. He stood by the door, listening. One of the younger employees sighed. "But what if the person in power doesn't care about respect?" Raymond chuckled softly. "Then they'll only get silence, not loyalty. Obedience, not trust. And one day, they'll wonder why they're alone." James felt a lump in his throat. Those words hit him harder than he expected. He thought about his employees, the way they avoided him, the way they never voiced their opinions. It wasn't because they respected him, it was because they feared him. For the first time, James saw himself clearly. The next morning, James did something he had never done before. He arrived early and walked into the office with a different approach. He greeted his employees by name. He asked about their families, their weekends. At first, they were suspicious, thinking it was a test. When an intern accidentally spilled coffee on a report, instead of scolding him, James simply said, "It's okay." Just print another copy. The intern looked at him, stunned, before nodding quickly. During a meeting, instead of issuing commands, James asked for opinions. At first, his team hesitated, but when he encouraged them, they slowly started contributing. One evening, he found Raymond cleaning the office as usual. James hesitated before speaking. "Raymond, can I ask you something?" Raymond looked up and smiled. "Of course, sir." James took a deep breath. "How do you earn respect?" Raymond studied him for a moment before answering. "By giving it first." James nodded slowly. That night, he reflected on every harsh word, every cold command, every time he made his employees feel small. And for the first time in his career, he felt ashamed. Over the following months, James changed. He still held high standards, but he also listened. He started mentoring younger employees, acknowledging their efforts. He made sure his team knew their voices mattered. And something incredible happened. People no longer worked out of fear. They worked with passion, with dedication. One day, as James passed the break room, he overheard another conversation. "I never thought Mr. Carter could change," an employee admitted. "But he has. He actually listens now." Raymond's voice responded, filled with pride. "Because respect isn't demanded, it's reflected." James smiled. He finally understood.